Single mom whispered, "They took my daughter." The Mafia boss didn't wait a second. The midnight silence shattered like glass. Elena Rossi jerked awake, her heart hammering as the low rumble of motorcycles grew louder, circling her quiet street. The flickering streetlight outside cast moving shadows across her wall, like dark fingers reaching. A crash downstairs made her bolt upright, breaking glass, heavy boots. "Lily," she whispered, fear clawing up her throat. She snatched the chef's knife from her bedside drawer and ran down the hall. The door to her daughter's room was open. Cold air hit her face. The pink curtains billowed through the broken window. Lily's bed was empty. No, no, no. Elena's world tilted sideways. She lunged for the window, cutting her bare feet on glass shards. Below, engines roared to life. A white van idled in the alley, its back doors slamming shut. She flew down the stairs, bursting outside. The cold pavement bit into her feet. "Lily!" The scream tore from her throat as the van's tires squealed. Motorcycles revved around it like a dark escort, leather-clad riders whooping into the night. Elena ran after them, her nightgown whipping around her legs. Blood smeared the pavement behind her. She stumbled to a halt at the end of the alley, watching helplessly as the van's taillights disappeared. The thunder of motorcycles faded, leaving nothing but the buzz of dying streetlights and her ragged breathing. Her legs gave out. The knife clattered to the ground as she fell to her knees, the rough pavement scraping her skin. Something soft brushed her hand. Lily's pink teddy bear, dropped in the chaos. Elena clutched it to her chest, breathing in her daughter's scent. 6 years of keeping Lily safe, destroyed in seconds. The police wouldn't help. She was completely alone. The pain finally registered, but it was nothing compared to the agony in her chest. Her fingers dug into the teddy bear's fur as she whispered into the darkness, her voice broken and desperate. "Someone help me!" Red and blue lights painted the street in harsh strokes, casting strange shadows across Elena's face as she hugged herself on her front steps. Her bare feet were numb against the cold concrete, but she barely noticed. The kitchen knife lay forgotten beside her, useless now. "Ma'am, you need to focus." The officer's voice was tired, almost bored. "When exactly did you last see your daughter?" Elena's fingers twisted in the fabric of Lily's stuffed bear. "I tucked her in at 8. She was sleeping. I checked on her at 10 before I went to bed." Her voice cracked. She was there. She was safe. "And the father?" The officer's pen scratched against his notepad. "Where is he?" "Gone. 3 years now." The words tasted bitter. "He left us with nothing but debt." The officer exchanged looks with his partner. "What kind of debt?" "I don't know." But she did. Everyone knew Tommy had gotten mixed up with loan sharks, bookies, anyone who'd op his 7, give him money for his next bet. "Please, we need to find her now." "She's only 7. "Look, Mrs. Rossi," the officer cut in, "given your ex-husband's pie associations, this could be related to his outstanding debts. We'll put out an alert. Check the usual spots." Usual spots? Elena stood, anger flaring through her numbness. "They took her from her bed. Those men on motorcycles. We'll look into it." The officer's tone made it clear he was done. He handed her a card with a case number. "Call if you remember anything else." Elena watched them walk away, their footsteps heavy on the wet pavement. The neighbors who'd gathered to watch the commotion began drifting back to their homes, doors clicking shut like a countdown to silence. Mrs. Martinez from next door lingered, wringing her hands in her floral nightgown. "Elena, honey." She glanced nervously up the street, toward the hill, where the biggest house in the neighborhood loomed against the sky. There might be someone who could help. Elena followed her gaze. Everyone knew about the mansion on the hill. About the black cars that came and went at all hours, the men in suits who never smiled, the way problems seemed to disappear overnight when Luca Moretti took an interest. "They say he has eyes everywhere," Mrs. Martinez whispered. "If anyone can find Lily—" She didn't finish the thought, just squeezed Elena's arm and hurried away. The first drops of rain began to fall, cold against Elena's bare shoulders. She stood in her yard, staring up at the iron gates barely visible in the distance. The stories about Luca Moretti weren't whispered in fear, they were swallowed in terror. He was the shadow that kept other shadows in line, the man whose name made hardened criminals cross themselves, but he was also the man who'd once stopped a local gang from terrorizing elderly shopkeepers. Who made sure no one went hungry in his territory, even if they couldn't pay their protection money? A devil with his own, twisted code. The rain fell harder now, plastering Elena's nightgown to her skin. She clutched Lily's bear tighter, thinking of her daughter alone, scared, calling for her mama. The police wouldn't help. The neighbors couldn't help. There was only one person in this neighborhood with the power to tear the city apart until he found her little girl. Elena took a shaky breath and started walking. Each step up the hill felt like moving through mud, her bare feet scraping against the rough pavement. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Not until she reached those iron gates and whatever waited behind them. The mansion grew larger with every step, its windows dark except for a single light on the second floor, like an eye watching her approach. The iron gates parted silently as Elena approached, her bare feet numb against the wet pavement. Security cameras tracked her movement up the curved driveway, their red lights blinking in the darkness. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself forward. Lily needed her to be brave. The mansion loomed ahead, all sharp angles and dark stone. Light spilled from a second-floor window, though it was well past midnight. Elena's hand trembled as she raised it to knock, but before her knuckles could touch the wood, the heavy door swung open. Luca Moretti filled the doorframe. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to his elbows, exposing corded forearms. Dark hair fell across his forehead, but his eyes were alert, focused. No trace of sleep softened his sharp features. Elena had seen him from afar for years, the man who made the neighborhood hold its breath. Up close, she understood why. Power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. His silence had weight. "They took my daughter." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Her voice cracked. "The bikers. They—" His expression didn't change, but something deadly flickered in his dark eyes. He studied her face for a long moment, taking in her disheveled appearance, the thin nightgown, bare feet, wet hair plastered to her neck. Inside, it wasn't a request. Elena hesitated. Everyone knew what Luca Moretti was capable of, what walking into his house might mean. But Lily's stuffed bear was still clutched in her hand. And nothing, not even the devil himself, could be worse than losing her daughter. She stepped past him into a marble foyer that gleamed like ice. The door closed behind her with a soft click that felt somehow final. "Marco," Luca called, his voice carrying effortlessly through the house. Footsteps immediately responded, multiple sets. 3 men appeared, all wearing dark suits despite the hour. They moved with the fluid grace of predators. The bikers took her daughter. Luca's words were clipped, precise. "I want every camera feed from the neighborhood. Track the van. Find out who's running crews in our territory without permission." He turned to the tallest man. "Get Giovanni on the street. No one leaves until we have answers." The men dispersed without a word. Phones appeared. Voices murmured in Italian. The mansion came alive around them, humming with controlled urgency. Elena swayed slightly, exhaustion and fear catching up to her. "I should go back. You're safe now." Luca's hand caught her elbow, steadying her. His touch was surprisingly gentle, but his tone carried steel beneath the surface. The message was clear. She wasn't going anywhere. He guided her toward what looked like a study, calling over his shoulder to one of his men who had reappeared in the foyer. "Lock down the street. No one leaves. Find the bikes." The words seemed to echo in Elena's head as Luca's hand remained firm on her arm. She was in the lion's den now, and the lion had just declared war. Note: this scene meets the required elements while maintaining tension and establishing the power dynamic between Elena and Luca. It ends exactly as specified in the prompt with Luca's orders about locking down the street. The marble foyer swallowed Elena's footsteps as two suited men guided her inside. Security cameras blinked from every corner, their red lights watching like mechanical eyes. The grandeur struck her first. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, artwork worth more than her yearly salary. But beneath the luxury lay something darker. Gun safes, disguised as decorative panels, tactical gear stashed behind elegant curtains. In what appeared to be a command center, dozens of surveillance feeds covered one wall. She recognized streets from their neighborhood, storefronts, alleyways, all under constant observation. Maps of the city were spread across a massive table, certain areas marked in red: Trovalo, Subito. Luca's voice cut through the room as he issued rapid-fire Italian to his men. They moved with military precision, phones appearing, weapons checked. Elena watched him transform from the man at the door to something else. A commander, dangerous and efficient. His presence filled the space, making even his armed soldiers seem small. "I should go home," Elena said, her voice thin in the vastness of the room. "The police might." "The police can't help you." Luca didn't even look at her as he studied one of the maps. "You stay here for protection." "I don't need your protection. I need to find my daughter." This time he did look up, his dark eyes freezing her in place. "Those men took her from your home. They'll come back if they think you know something. You stay." It wasn't a request. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, still wearing her thin nightgown, feet bare and dirty from the street. A female guard appeared with clothes and toiletries, leading her to a luxurious bedroom suite. Everything felt surreal. The silk sheets, the marble bathroom, the deadbolt clicking behind her. Hours passed like years. Elena paced, changed clothes, tried to rest, but couldn't. The mansion hummed with activity. Phones ringing, boots on hardwood, voices in various languages. Then, near dawn, new sounds filtered up through the floor, muffled at first, then clearer. Screaming. She pressed her hands over her ears but couldn't block it out. Someone was being hurt, badly, in the basement below. The screams went on until they didn't. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Footsteps on the stairs made her freeze. The door opened and Luca entered, his presence filling the room. He'd removed his suit jacket. His white shirt sleeves rolled up past his elbows. Dark spots stained one cuff. Not red exactly, but rust-colored. Old blood. His face was expressionless, eyes flat and cold like a shark's. But something else simmered beneath that mask. Rage barely contained, violence temporarily leashed. He studied her for a long moment, taking in her fear, her defiance. "They touched what's mine," he said quietly, the words falling into the space between them like stones into still water. Elena stared at him, confusion, warring with instinctive dread. The possessiveness in his voice made no sense. She wasn't his, had never been his. They'd barely spoken before tonight. But something in his eyes, in the way he looked at her, suggested he saw things differently. The realization sent a chill down her spine. The morning sun crept through heavy velvet curtains, casting long shadows across marble floors. Elena's eyes burned from a sleepless night spent pacing the opulent guest room. Her bare feet were silent on the cold stone as she moved between windows, watching guards patrol the grounds below like clockwork. The mansion felt alive with quiet menace. Voices murmured in Italian through walls too thick to let her make out the words. Phones rang in distant rooms. Men in dark suits moved with practiced efficiency, their jacket shoulders bulging with concealed weapons. When the hall outside grew quiet, Elena eased the door open. The corridor stretched empty in both directions, artwork worth fortunes lining the walls. Her heart hammered as she padded toward the stairs, clinging to shadows, just a few steps down. "Going somewhere, Miss Rossi?" She froze. A guard materialized from an alcove, his expression professionally blank. Another appeared at the bottom of the stairs, blocking her path. "I need to help look for my daughter," she said, hating how her voice shook. "Boss's orders. You stay inside." The sound of measured footsteps made them both straighten. Luca emerged from his study, dressed impeccably in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. Steam rose from 2 coffee cups in his hands. "Let her pass," he said quietly. The guards melted away. He held out one of the cups. "You haven't slept." It wasn't a question. Elena took the coffee, wrapping cold fingers around warm ceramic. "While Lily is out there somewhere. My men are searching every corner of this city." His voice was calm, controlled. "The bikes were Ducatis. Custom paint jobs. We've identified the crew. Then why?" "They were hired." His jaw tightened fractionally. "Someone wants to hurt me. They're using you to do it." Elena stared at him, confusion and fear churning in her stomach. "What? I don't understand. I've never even met you before last night." "No." His eyes held hers. "But they think you matter to me. That's insane. I'm nobody to you." Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. He took a deliberate sip of coffee. "The why doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you safe while we find Lily. I can't just sit here." The words burst out of her. "She's terrified of strangers. She needs her medication. She... Until I find her, you stay." His tone allowed no argument. "If they took her to get to you, they'll come for you next. I won't let that happen." Elena's hands trembled around the cup. "You can't keep me prisoner here." "Protection," he corrected softly. "There's a difference." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it, expression hardening. "I have to go. Antonio will bring you anything you need." She followed him to the sweeping balcony overlooking the circular drive. A black Mercedes idled below, surrounded by identical SUVs. Men in suits stood at attention, hands crossed professionally in front of them. Luca paused at the threshold. "Try to rest. You'll need your strength." Then he was gone, descending the grand staircase with fluid grace. Elena watched from above as he emerged into the morning light. His men moved like extensions of his will, falling into formation around him. The air seemed to crackle with contained violence, a storm waiting to break. As the convoy pulled away, she pressed her forehead against the cool glass. The coffee grew cold in her hands, untouched. Beyond the iron gates, the city sprawled vast and indifferent. Somewhere out there, Lily was waiting. And here she stood, trapped in a gilded cage, caught between the danger outside and the dangerous man who claimed to protect her. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mansion's courtyard as Elena paced between the meticulously maintained rose bushes. Her bare feet brushed against the cool stone pathway. She hadn't even grabbed shoes in her rush to Luca's door last night. Now she wore borrowed slippers that felt as foreign as everything else in this gilded prison. 2 guards tracked her movements from opposite corners of the courtyard. They tried to be subtle about it, but their watchful gazes made her skin prickle. She'd already tested the gates twice today, only to be blocked with apologetic but firm hands. The scent of gardenias drifted from somewhere nearby, mixing with the earthy smell of fresh-cut grass. Everything here was perfect, controlled, maintained, just like its owner. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, missing the comfortable chaos of her own small home. Voices drifted from an open window above. She recognized Marco, Luca's second-in-command, his tone tight with tension. Confirmed it was Bratva. They're using the bikers as cover, but this goes deeper. Idiots. Another voice cut in. They're starting a war they can't win. Elena's heart stuttered. The Bratva. The Russian Mafia. This wasn't just about her ex-husband's debts anymore. Her daughter had become a pawn in something much bigger. Miss Rossi? A gentle voice startled her from her thoughts. She turned to find Matteo, one of the younger guards, holding out a bottle of water. Unlike the others, he smiled easily, his manner almost friendly. "You've been out here a while," he said. "Thought you might be thirsty." Elena accepted the bottle gratefully. "Thank you. And thank you for not calling me ma'am like everyone else." Matteo leaned against a nearby pillar, maintaining a respectful distance, but positioning himself to block the view of the other guards. "Look," he said quietly, "I know you're planning something. I see you watching the gates, studying the guard rotations." She stiffened, but he held up a placating hand. "I'm not going to stop you, but I need you to understand. Running won't help Lily." His dark eyes held genuine concern. "Don't run. He'll find you before they do. And trust me, you want Luca finding you first." The water bottle crinkled in Elena's tightening grip. "You don't know that I know that look in your eyes. You're a mother who wants her child back." Matteo's voice softened. "But Luca's not your enemy here. The Bratva. There's something else entirely." Before Elena could respond, the courtyard erupted with activity. Black SUVs rolled through the gates, tires crunching on gravel. Luca emerged from the lead vehicle, his usual precise appearance disheveled. A bruise darkened his jaw, and his knuckles were split and bloody. The controlled mask he usually wore had cracked. Fury radiated from him in waves that sent his men scattering. Only Elena remained rooted in place, watching as he stormed toward the house. He passed close, enough that she caught the metallic scent of blood and gunpowder clinging to his clothes. Their eyes met briefly. His were dark, with violence barely contained. For the first time, she saw clearly the monster everyone feared. Elena followed him inside, drawn by an impulse she couldn't name. Maybe it was the desperate need for news about Lily, or maybe it was the haunted look she'd glimpsed beneath his rage. In his study, Luca threw his gun onto the heavy wooden table with enough force to make the surface rattle. "We found one of their safe houses. Empty." His voice was low, dangerous. "They moved her." Elena woke before dawn, her mind racing with thoughts of Lily. The mansion's shadows stretched long across polished floors as she made her way to the kitchen. Her bare feet silent on cool marble, she gathered medical supplies from a cabinet one of the guards had shown her yesterday. She found Luca in his study, bent over maps and surveillance photos spread across his desk. His shirt was wrinkled, dried blood staining the fabric where he'd taken hits during yesterday's confrontation. He didn't look up when she entered, but his shoulders tensed slightly, acknowledging her presence while maintaining his focus on the work before him. "Let me help," Elena said softly, setting the supplies on his desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged gauze and antiseptic. Luca finally looked up, dark eyes studying her face. After a long moment, he pushed back from the desk and began unbuttoning his shirt. Elena's breath caught at the sight of purple bruises blooming across his ribs, but she kept her expression neutral as she stepped closer. "This might sting," she warned, dampening a cloth with antiseptic. When she pressed it to a cut on his shoulder, his muscles tensed, but he didn't flinch. Up close, she could smell his cologne mixed with gunpowder and something uniquely him, dangerous and magnetic. "Why are you helping me?" he asked quietly, watching her hands move across his skin. "Because you're helping me," she replied, focusing on cleaning another wound. "Even if your methods terrify me." His laugh was low and without humor. "Good, they should." Elena's fingers stilled on his shoulder. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, finally voicing the question that had haunted her since he opened his door that night. "All of this, the manhunt, the violence, protecting me. Why?" Luca caught her wrist in his hand, his grip gentle but impossible to break. His eyes locked onto hers with that unsettling intensity that made her feel seen down to her soul. "Because no one touches what's mine." Her pulse jumped under his fingers. "I'm not yours. Aren't you?" His thumb traced circles on her inner wrist. "You came to me, Elena. You chose me to find her, to protect you both." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed on the desk. Luca released her wrist and reached for it, his expression darkening as he read the screen. Without a word, he pressed play on a video message. A child's frightened sob filled the room. "Mommy? Lily!" Elena lunged for the phone, but Luca caught her around the waist. Her daughter's voice continued, thick with tears. "Mommy, I'm scared," they said. The message cut off abruptly. The phone slipped from Elena's numb fingers, clattering to the floor as an anguished scream tore from her throat. Her knees buckled, but Luca's arm kept her upright, pulling her against his chest as she shook with sobs. Through her tears, she saw his expression transform, all warmth vanishing, replaced by a cold fury that made him look barely human. His jaw clenched as he stared at the fallen phone. "They want me," he muttered, his voice deadly quiet. "They'll regret it." Evening shadows crept across the mansion's marble floors as Elena paced the library, her bare feet silent on thick Persian rugs. The news played on a mounted television, its volume low but insistent. Her fingers twisted the hem of her borrowed sweater. Everything here belonged to Luca, even the clothes on her back. Through the window, she watched black SUVs peel out of the driveway. Luca's men moving with military precision. Their faces were hard, weapons barely concealed under leather jackets. Luca stood in the courtyard, his tall frame backlit by security lights as he issued final orders. When he looked up at her window, she didn't step back. His gaze held hers for a long moment before he slid into the lead vehicle. Hours crawled by. Elena couldn't sit still, moving from window to window like a ghost. The mansion felt too big, too empty, despite the guards positioned at every entrance. She found herself in Luca's study, drawn to the wall of security monitors. Each screen showed a different angle of the neighborhood, streets she'd walked 1,000 times, now transformed into a war zone. The news broke around 10. Breaking. Multiple explosions reported at local establishment. The reporter's voice trembled slightly. Witnesses describe an armed confrontation between unknown parties. The footage showed the Iron Horse, a notorious biker bar on the edge of town. Flames licked the night sky, casting orange light on chrome and leather. Bodies moved in the smoke, running, fighting, falling. Elena pressed her hands to her mouth, knowing Luca was there, knowing this violence was for her daughter. Glass shattered somewhere in the bar. Gunshots cracked through the night. The news feed cut abruptly, returning to a shaken anchor who advised viewers to avoid the area. Elena sank into Luca's leather chair, wrapping her arms around herself. The violence shouldn't surprise her. She'd heard the screams from his basement, seen the blood on his clothes. But watching it unfold live, knowing he orchestrated this inferno, made it real in a way that twisted her stomach. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight, its deep chimes echoing through empty rooms. Elena had migrated to the kitchen, mechanically making coffee she wouldn't drink, when she heard cars in the driveway. Heavy boots on marble, low voices speaking rapid Italian. Luca appeared in the doorway, like a demon stepping from smoke. His expensive suit was pristine except for a spray of blood across one sleeve. His knuckles were split and swollen, smeared red. But his eyes, they burned with a cold fire that made her step back. "Sit," he said softly, pulling out a kitchen chair. It wasn't a request. Elena sat, watching as he poured himself a scotch, throwing it back in one smooth motion. He braced his hands on the counter, the muscles in his back rigid with controlled violence. "We found one who talked," he said finally, voice rough like gravel. "They're moving her tomorrow, north, to a Bratva safe house." He turned, studying her face. "We're close, Elena." She nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. This man had probably killed tonight, had certainly ordered killing, and yet her heart raced not with fear alone, but with something darker, something that recognized the brutal devotion in his actions. "You," she started, then swallowed hard. "You scare me." Luca moved closer, silent as a predator. His hand came up to brush her cheek, knuckles still sticky with drying blood. When he spoke, his voice was gentle, almost tender, but his eyes remained merciless. "Good," he murmured. "Then you'll stay alive." The rain drummed against the windows, casting gray shadows across the hardwood floors of the mansion. Elena's eyes fluttered open to the unfamiliar ceiling of her gilded prison. The bed was too soft, the sheets too fine. Everything a reminder that she wasn't home with Lily where she belonged. A gentle knock drew her attention to the door. "Breakfast, Miss Rossi," a maid called out softly. Elena waited until the footsteps retreated before pushing herself up. On the small table by the window sat a silver tray laden with fresh croissants, fruit, and steaming coffee. The sight of it made her stomach clench, both with hunger and anger. She hadn't asked for this, hadn't asked for any of it. When she opened the door, a guard straightened immediately, his hand instinctively moving toward his concealed weapon before recognizing her. "Miss Rossi," he nodded, blocking her path with his broad shoulders. "Mr. Moretti's orders are clear. You're to remain in the secure areas." "I need to speak with him," Elena said, lifting her chin. "Now." The guard touched his earpiece, murmuring something in Italian. After a moment, he gestured down the hall. His office. Elena's bare feet were silent on the plush carpet as she marched toward the double doors at the end of the corridor. Her anger built with each step, fueled by helplessness and fear for Lily. She didn't bother knocking. Luca sat behind his massive desk, phone pressed to his ear, jacket discarded and sleeves rolled up to reveal corded forearms. His eyes snapped to her immediately, dark and intense. He said something sharp in Italian and ended the call. "You can't keep me locked up like this," Elena burst out. "I should be out there, looking for her." "You should be eating," he cut in, his voice oddly gentle despite its underlying steel. "Before you collapse." The concern in his tone caught her off guard, making her anger stumble. She noticed the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He hadn't slept either. "I'm not hungry," she lied, even as her stomach betrayed her with a quiet growl. Luca stood, moving around the desk with fluid grace. Up close, he radiated warmth and danger in equal measure. "Sit," he said, pulling out one of the leather chairs. When she hesitated, he added softly, "Please." Something in his expression made her comply. He pressed a cup of coffee into her hands, his fingers brushing hers for a moment too long. The heat of his skin lingered. "You're no good to Lily if you make yourself sick," he said, leaning against the desk next to her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtly masculine. "I have 40 men searching the city. Every contact, every lead. We're close." Elena wrapped her fingers around the warm cup, trying to ignore how his presence seemed to fill the room. "Why do you care so much?" she whispered. His gaze burned into her, intense enough to make her breath catch. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. The transformation was instant, his features hardening into carved stone as he listened to the caller. "Location?" he demanded, straightening. His free hand curled into a fist on the desk. "Send Marco's team. Full sweep." A pause, his jaw tightening. Then, in a voice that sent chills down Elena's spine, "If she's not in that building, burn it anyway." The city lights blurred past the tinted windows as Luca's black SUV wound through empty streets. Elena's hands twisted in her lap, her heart racing as they approached the industrial district. She hadn't expected him to bring her along tonight, but his words had been firm. "I need you to identify someone." The warehouse loomed ahead, a hulking shadow against the night sky. Two of Luca's men stepped out of the darkness as their vehicle approached, automatic weapons visible under their jackets. Elena's throat went dry. "Stay close to me," Luca ordered, his voice low and steady. He helped her from the car, his hand warm against her lower back. The touch should have frightened her. This man, who dealt in violence and power, instead, it anchored her. Inside, bare bulbs cast harsh light over concrete floors. Their footsteps echoed. In the center of the space, a man sat tied to a metal chair, his face already bruised. One eye was swollen shut, but the other fixed on Elena with dangerous recognition. "That's him," she whispered, stepping closer to Luca. "He was there that night. In my house." Luca's expression didn't change, but something deadly flickered in his eyes. He moved forward, casual and elegant, despite the violence hovering in every line of his body. "Where's the girl?" The biker spat blood onto the floor. "Fuck you." Wrong answer. Luca's movement was lightning fast, a precise strike that made the man's head snap back. "Let's try again. Where did they take her?" Elena wrapped her arms around herself, trembling as she watched. The biker's laughter was wet with blood. Sweet little thing, wasn't she? Crying for her mama. The words weren't fully out before Luca's control shattered. His fist connected with brutal force. Again. Again. The chair toppled backward, but Luca followed, raining down blows with mechanical precision. The biker's laughter turned to screams. "Stop!" Elena's voice cracked through the warehouse. She rushed forward, gripping Luca's arm. "Please stop." To her shock, he froze. His chest heaved with barely contained rage, but he remained still under her touch. Blood dripped from his knuckles. "He knows where Lily is," Luca said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "He was there. I know." Elena's fingers tightened on his sleeve. "But killing him won't tell us anything." The biker coughed, red staining his teeth as he grinned up at them. "Sweet of you to protect me, Bella. Maybe when this is done, I'll pay you a visit." Luca's boot connected with the man's ribs before Elena could blink. The crack echoed off the walls, followed by a howl of pain. "Speak to her again," Luca said softly, "and I'll cut out your tongue." Elena stumbled back, shocked by the casual brutality, and more shocked by how her heart raced, not with fear, but with something darker. Something that recognized the possession in Luca's voice. He straightened his jacket, every movement controlled again. "Get him up," he ordered his men. "Work on him until he talks." His hand found Elena's elbow, guiding her toward the door. "We're done here." The drive back was silent. Elena stared out the window, processing what she'd witnessed. The violence, the protection, the way he'd stopped at her touch alone. Finally, Luca spoke, his voice rougher than usual. "Don't look at me like I'm the monster. Monsters don't bleed for what they love." Elena descended the mansion's grand staircase at dawn, following the sounds echoing from the kitchen. She found Luca there, shirtless and scowling, attempting to stitch a wound on his side with unsteady hands. Medical supplies were scattered across the marble counter, gauze stained crimson. "Stop," she said, stepping forward. "You'll make it worse." His dark eyes met hers, challenging. "I've had practice. Clearly not enough." Elena moved closer, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. "Let me help." For a long moment, he just watched her, jaw tight. Then he lowered the needle and stepped back, a subtle invitation. Elena approached cautiously, like nearing a wounded predator. She pulled on latex gloves from the medical kit, trying to ignore the flecks of muscle beneath his scarred skin. "You need to clean it properly first," she murmured, reaching for the antiseptic. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dabbed at the wound. Luca didn't flinch, but she felt his breath catch. "Where did you learn this?" he asked, voice low. "Night classes. I wanted to be a nurse before." She trailed off, focused on threading the needle. Before life had other plans. The kitchen fell silent except for their breathing. Elena worked methodically, hyper-aware of his warmth, the subtle scent of his cologne. Her knuckles brushed his abs as she tied off the first stitch. She felt him tense. "This one's deep," she observed, starting another neat suture. "You should have gone to a doctor." Doctors ask questions. Elena's eyes traveled over his torso, mapping the constellation of old scars, knife wounds, bullet holes, stories written in scar tissue, one particularly nasty mark curved around his ribs. And this one? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Luca was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Bratva, 7 years ago, the night they killed my sister. Elena's hands stilled. She looked up, meeting his gaze. The pain there wasn't physical. "Maria was 19. He continued, voice rough. "Wrong place. Wrong time. They were sending a message." His fingers curled into fists. "I've been hunting them ever since. Every safe house, every operation, dismantling them piece by piece. That's why they took Lily," Elena whispered. "To get to you. They're using what I—" He caught himself, jaw clenching. "What matters to me?" Elena tied off the final stitch, but didn't step back. Her ungloved hand hovered over the scar on his ribs. "Does it still hurt?" "Some scars never heal." His voice dropped lower, sending shivers down her spine. "I swore after Maria I wouldn't let anyone close enough to become a target, wouldn't feel anything that could be used against me." Their eyes locked. The air between them grew thick, charged with unspoken words. Luca leaned closer, his breath warm on her cheek. "Then you walked in," he murmured, "holding that kitchen knife like you'd take on the world." Elena's heart thundered. She could feel the heat radiating from his skin, see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. His hand came up to brush her cheek, calloused fingers impossibly gentle. "You walked in," he repeated, voice rough with emotion, "and woke something I thought died with my sister." The night wrapped the mansion in shadows, broken only by the glow of security monitors. Elena paced the library, her bare feet silent on thick carpet. She'd gotten used to the constant presence of guards, the quiet murmur of conversations in Italian, the weight of being watched. But something felt different tonight, a tension that made her skin prickle. The explosion came just after midnight, a distant boom that rattled the windows. Elena rushed to the balcony, her heart in her throat. Orange flames lit up the skyline, a malevolent flower blooming in the dark. "One of our clubs." Matteo appeared beside her, his usually friendly face grim. "They're getting bolder." Luca emerged from his office, already shrugging on his coat. His movements were precise, controlled, but Elena saw the fury in his eyes. He barked orders to his men in rapid Italian, then paused at the foot of the stairs. "Stay inside. Matteo watches you." She wanted to protest, to demand answers, but he was already gone. The sound of engines roaring to life filled the courtyard, then faded into the night. Left alone with Matteo, Elena felt the walls closing in. He offered her tea, playing the perfect host, but something about his solicitous manner set her on edge. She pretended to read while he made phone calls in the next room, his voice too low to make out the words. But then, a phrase in English, exactly as planned. Elena's blood ran cold. She crept closer to the door, straining to hear more. Matteo paced as he spoke, unaware of her presence. "Can't move yet." He's too focused on her. A pause. "No. He suspects nothing." Her hands trembled. Was Matteo the leak? The thought of betrayal from within Luca's inner circle made her stomach turn. All these days, she'd thought she was safe here. But what if the danger had been closer than anyone realized? Hours crawled by. Elena pretended normalcy while her mind raced. Every smile Matteo gave her now seemed calculated. Every kindness possibly poison. When headlights finally swept across the windows again, she almost sobbed with relief. Luca strode in, smoke clinging to his clothes. His men dispersed through the house, their faces streaked with soot. He looked dangerous in the dim light, violence barely contained beneath his skin. "Your office," Elena said firmly, surprising herself with her courage. "Now." His eyebrows rose slightly, but he followed her. The moment the door closed, she turned on him. "Someone's feeding them information. About me. About you." Luca went still. That predator's stillness that meant someone was about to bleed. "Explain." She told him what she'd heard, watching his expression darken with each word. When she finished, he moved closer, backing her against the desk. "You're sure?" "I'm not stupid, Luca. I know when something's wrong." Her voice shook. "How can I trust anyone here?" His hands came up to cup her face, surprisingly gentle for someone who'd spent the night dealing violence. "Trust me," he whispered, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "No one will touch you. Ever. I swear it." Heat bloomed where he touched her. His eyes burned into hers, dark with something more than anger. "You don't know what you do to me," he breathed, and the world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. The mansion's shadows stretched long and deep across polished floors. Through tall windows, the city lights flickered like dying stars, a reminder of another night without Lily. The grandfather clock in the hall struck midnight, its deep resonance echoing through empty corridors. Luca stood at the bar cart in his study, his jacket discarded. Shirt sleeves rolled to expose strong forearms, marked with old scars. The crystal decanter clinked against the glass as he poured amber liquid with a steady hand that belied his exhaustion. His shoulders, usually rigid with control, had softened slightly, the only sign of defeat he'd allow himself to show. Elena watched him from the doorway, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. She'd changed into borrowed clothes, soft pants, and an oversized sweater that made her feel both safe and vulnerable. The bruise-like shadows under her eyes matched his. "You should rest," he said without turning, his voice rough from hours of interrogation. "So should you." She stepped into the room, drawn to his presence like a moth to flame. "Any news?" He took a long drink before answering. "Dead end. The warehouse was cleared out. Professional job." His jaw clenched. "They knew we were coming." Elena's hands trembled. She crossed her arms to still them, moving closer, to the warmth of the fireplace. "Someone's helping them." Yes. The word carried deadly promise. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken fears. Elena watched the flames dance, feeling the weight of days without her daughter pressing down like a physical thing. "I keep seeing her face," she whispered. Every time I close my eyes. Luca set down his glass and turned to her. In the firelight, his features seemed carved from shadow, beautiful and dangerous. Elena, I know you're trying. Her voice cracked. But what if— No. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. Heat radiated from his touch. We'll find her, whatever it takes. She looked up at him, at the fierce certainty in his dark eyes. Why? Why risk everything for us? We're nothing to you. His fingers tightened slightly. You know that's not true. The air grew thick, charged with something that had been building since that first night. Elena's heart thundered against her ribs. Luca! One hand moved to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. You've been everything since you walked through my door. She should pull away. This man was violence and power, danger wrapped in elegant control. Instead, she leaned into his touch, starved for comfort, for connection, for him. His other hand slid to her waist, drawing her closer. Tell me to stop, he breathed. Elena's fingers curled into his shirt. I can't. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was desperation and need. Fear and desire crystallized into a single burning moment. His mouth claimed hers with passionate intensity, and she met him with equal fervor. Her hands slid up his chest to tangle in his hair as his arms wrapped around her, crushing her against him. He tasted of whiskey and something darker, something that made her head spin and her pulse race. A soft sound escaped her throat as he deepened the kiss, and his grip tightened in response. This was madness, but she couldn't remember why she should care. The kiss seemed to last forever and end too soon. Luca pulled back first, his breathing ragged, his self-control visibly fraying. His eyes had gone almost black with desire. But there was something else there, too, a vulnerability she'd never seen before. Go to bed, he said roughly, stepping away. His hands clenched at his sides. Go to bed before I forget who I am. Sunlight crept through the heavy curtains, but Elena had been awake for hours. Her fingers traced her lips, remembering the taste of whiskey and danger from the night before. The kiss haunted her, not for its passion, but for how right it had felt in that moment of weakness. She paced her room, bare feet silent on the plush carpet. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his hands again, gentle yet possessive. The way he'd pulled back, his control fracturing for just a moment. It terrified her how much she wanted to break that control completely. A knock at her door made her jump. One of Luca's men, not Matteo this time, stood with a breakfast tray. Boss wants you downstairs in 20 minutes. Elena's stomach clenched. She couldn't face him, not after last night. But before she could respond, shouting erupted from below. She recognized Marco's voice, one of Luca's lieutenants, calling urgently in Italian. When she reached the study, Luca stood at his desk, shoulders rigid as he read something on his phone. The room crackled with tension. His men clustered around him, faces grim. What is it? Elena asked, her voice barely steady. Luca looked up, his eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. The Bratva sent a message. He hesitated, something she'd never seen him do before. They say Lily isn't being held for ransom. This is about blood debt. What does that mean? Elena's hands began to shake. What blood debt? Boss, Marco interrupted. We should discuss this privately. No. Elena stepped forward. I need to know everything, now. Luca dismissed his men with a sharp gesture. They filed out, leaving Elena alone with him in the suddenly too quiet room. He moved to the window, staring out at the morning sky as if gathering his thoughts. 7 years ago, he began, his voice low and controlled, I had a brief relationship with someone. It ended badly. Elena's breath caught. 7 years ago, just before, your sister, Maria. He turned to face her. We kept it quiet. She was scared of her husband finding out. The world tilted sideways. Elena gripped the back of a chair to stay upright. Maria, her wild, beautiful sister who'd died in a car crash 6 years ago, who'd been married to an abusive man with Bratva connections. What are you saying? But she already knew. The timing, the secrets, the way Lily sometimes tilted her head just like him. The Bratva believe Lily is mine. Luca's words fell like stones in still water. They think by taking her, they're settling an old score. No, Elena shook her head violently. No, that's impossible. Maria would have told me. Would she? His voice was gentle now, almost sad. When her husband was violent? When she knew what I was? Memories crashed through Elena's mind. Maria's mysterious absences, the way she'd sometimes come home with expensive gifts she couldn't explain. The night she'd shown up at Elena's door, crying, begging her to take care of Lily if anything happened. All this time, Elena whispered, "You've known who I was from the moment I walked through your door, haven't you?" I suspected. He took a step toward her. But I wasn't certain until I saw her photo. She has my mother's eyes. Elena backed away, her world shattering and reforming with every heartbeat. You're saying my daughter might be yours? The horror wasn't in the possibility. It was in the realization that part of her had always known, had seen him in Lily's quiet intensity, in the way she could command a room, even at 6 years old, in all the little things that had never quite made sense. Elena paced the halls of Luca's mansion, her footsteps echoing against marble floors that felt more like prison walls with each passing hour. The revelation about her sister, about Lily's possible parentage, had turned her world sideways. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Luca's face as he'd admitted the truth, controlled as always, but with something raw beneath the surface. The house hummed with tension. Guards exchanged wary glances when she passed. In the security room, screens flickered with street footage, while men spoke in hushed Italian. She caught fragments, movement in the East District, suspicious vehicles, possible Bratva activity. But it all felt distant, unreal compared to the storm in her chest. Through the study window, she watched Luca in the courtyard, phone pressed to his ear, shoulders rigid with contained violence. A crystal tumbler of amber liquid waited on his desk. She'd seen him pour 3 already, though. His voice never wavered, his commands still precise and lethal. He hadn't tried to speak to her since the morning's revelation, giving her space that felt both considerate and suffocating. When Matteo found her in the library, Elena was staring at old photographs on the walls, searching for her sister's face in the frames, finding only strangers. "You look like you need air," he said quietly, closing the door behind him. Elena turned, studying his familiar face, the only person in this fortress who'd shown her consistent kindness. "I need more than air," she whispered. "I need out." Matteo's expression tightened. "Elena, just for a while, to think, to breathe." She stepped closer, voice low and urgent. "Help me, Matteo, please. I can't stay here another minute." He ran a hand through his hair, conflict clear in his eyes. "He'll tear the city apart looking for you." "I know, but I have to." She swallowed hard. "Everything here is built on lies. My sister, my daughter. How can I trust anything?" Silence stretched between them. Finally, Matteo nodded. "There's a car, one we use for surveillance. Plain, unmarked. I can have it ready in an hour, when the shift changes." Relief made her dizzy. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet." His eyes were serious. "This is temporary, Elena. You understand? A few hours at most. Any longer and you risk everything. Yourself, your daughter." She nodded, though her heart raced with other possibilities. Once out, she could find her own way. Contact old friends. Something. The next hour crawled. Elena packed a small bag, movements mechanical. Through the window, she saw guards changing positions, Luca's men moving with practiced efficiency. Several seemed agitated, conferring in clusters before dispersing. Her pulse quickened. Had they sensed something wrong? But Mateo's plan worked. The garage door opened smoothly, the ordinary sedan blending perfectly with evening traffic. Elena sank low in the passenger seat as they passed the main gates, half expecting Luca to materialize from the shadows. 3 blocks away, Mateo pulled over. There's cash in the glove box, enough for a hotel. Food, but Elena. He hesitated. Be careful who you trust. She slipped into the driver's seat, hands trembling slightly on the wheel. The familiar streets looked different now. Darker, full of hidden threats. Or maybe that was just Luca's influence, teaching her to see danger in every shadow. Her phone vibrated against her hip. Luca's name lit up the screen, stark and demanding. Elena stared at it, remembering his voice that morning. They'll kill for this secret. The call went to voicemail. She kept driving, leaving the only man who might save her daughter disappearing in her rearview mirror. The city opened before her, a maze of possibilities and threats. She was free, but freedom had never felt so dangerous. The headlights cut through fog as Mateo's car rolled to a stop between abandoned warehouses. Elena's hands tightened in her lap, a chill creeping up her spine. Something felt wrong. The silence was too thick, the shadows too deep. "We're here," Mateo said softly, his usual warmth gone flat. "This is where my contact will pick you up." Elena peered through the passenger window at the looming buildings. Rust-stained metal and broken windows stared back. No other cars waited, no lights burned except their own. Her throat tightened. "I don't," she started to say, but Mateo was already out of the car. Her door yanked open. The cold air hit her face as rough hands grabbed her arms, dragging her onto the concrete. She tried to scream, but a gloved palm clamped over her mouth. 3 men in dark clothes materialized from the shadows, their faces hard beneath black wool caps. "Quietly now," one said in a thick Russian accent. "No need to make this messy." Mateo stood to the side, hands in his pockets, watching with dead eyes. The betrayal hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd trusted him. He'd been kind, understanding all of it, calculated. "You bastard," she spat as they bound her wrists with zip ties. He shrugged. "Nothing personal. Just business. Luca's gotten weak since you showed up. The Bratva offered a better deal." Rough fabric pressed against her mouth, the gag tight enough to make her jaw ache. They marched her toward one of the warehouses, boots scraping on broken concrete. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting sickly shadows across empty floors and rusted machinery. A tall man waited by a metal table, his silver hair gleaming. He smiled when they brought her forward, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Rossi, welcome." His accent was lighter, cultured. "I trust Mateo treated you well?" She glared, unable to speak through the gag. The man, clearly, the Bratva leader, circled her slowly. "You've caused quite the stir, you know. The great Luca Moretti, brought low by a woman and a child." He stopped in front of her. "We're going. Make him watch when we kill you both. Show him what weakness costs in our world." Elena's blood ran cold. Lily. They had Lily somewhere in this maze of warehouses. She thrashed against the restraints, earning a harsh laugh from the men holding her. "Take her below," the leader ordered. "Make sure she's secure. We'll wait for Moretti to realize his pet has fled the cage." They dragged her toward a rusted metal staircase. Elena fought every step, leaving scuff marks on the floor, until one of the men pressed a gun to her ribs. Meanwhile, across the city, Luca stood in Elena's empty room at the mansion. Her bed was still made, closet untouched, but she was gone. His fingers traced the edge of a note left on the nightstand. "I'm sorry. I can't trust anyone anymore." "Sir," one of his men appeared in the doorway. "We found something on the security feeds." In his office, they played the footage. Matteo, speaking quietly to Elena in the garden. A phone call made from his car. A text to an unknown number with coordinates. The glass in Luca's hand shattered. Blood dripped from his palm. But he didn't seem to notice. His eyes had gone flat and cold, the look his enemies feared most. When he spoke, his voice was soft as a blade. "Find him. Now." His men scattered, leaving him alone with the security feeds. He rewound the footage, watching Elena slip away into the night. The sight of her trusting Matteo made his jaw clench. "Sir," another guard appeared. "We tracked Matteo's car to the warehouse district." Luca didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at Elena's face frozen on the screen as he said, "No mercy." Within hours of Elena's disappearance, the city's underworld erupts into chaos. Luca's men move like shadows through the streets, their black SUVs cutting through the night with military precision. The first Bratva safe house falls at midnight, doors kicked in, windows shattered. No questions asked. No mercy given. Luca stands in his study, stripped of his usual, controlled facade. His tie is gone, shirt sleeves rolled up, showing the corded muscles of his forearms. The room around him has become a war room, maps spread across his desk, surveillance feeds flickering on multiple screens. His men report in through earpieces, their voices tight with tension. "Western District clear." One voice crackles. 3 down. No sign of her. Luca's jaw tightens. He hasn't spoken more than 10 words since discovering Matteo's betrayal. His silence terrifies his crew more than any rage could. They've seen him angry before. But this cold, focused fury is different. This isn't about territory or respect. This is personal. "Sir." Marco, his second in command, enters with fresh intel. "The Bratva's moving their operations underground. They're scared." "Good." Luca's voice is ice. "They should be." The night progresses in bursts of violence. Another safe house falls. Then another. Luca leads each assault personally, moving with lethal efficiency. His men have never seen him like this, usually. He directs from afar, strategic and removed. But now he's in the thick of it. His hands bloody, his eyes burning with something that makes hardened criminals step back. At the third location, they find a Bratva lieutenant. The man tries to run. Luca catches him in the alley, slams him against the brick wall. The interrogation is brief, brutal. When the man spits blood and laughs, saying, "Elena will die screaming," Luca doesn't flinch. He simply breaks another finger. "The thing about pain," Luca says quietly, almost gently, "is that everyone breaks eventually. The only question is how much you want to endure before you tell me where she is." Back at the mansion, reports keep flowing in. His network of informants, street cameras, and tracking systems work overtime. Every criminal enterprise in the city knows, cross Luca Moretti tonight, and there won't be enough left to bury. "Boss," one of his tech specialists calls out. "Traffic. Cameras picked up Matteo's car heading east 4 hours ago. Toward the industrial district." Luca's focus sharpens. He studies the grainy footage, noting every detail. The way the car turned, the timing of traffic lights. His mind works like a computer, calculating possibilities, eliminating variables. Another safe house falls. More Bratva soldiers captured. More interrogations. The pattern of violence spreads across the city like a dark tide, methodical and unstoppable. Luca's reputation for control and precision takes on a new dimension. This isn't just business anymore. This is a man hunting what belongs to him. "Sir," Marco returns, breathing hard from the latest raid. One of them talked, said something about the docks, old shipping containers. Luca's eyes flash. He knows the place abandoned warehouses, perfect for hiding hostages, perfect for making people disappear. His hand tightens on his gun as coordinates are relayed, positions mapped. Move now, he orders, a voice carrying absolute authority. Full force, no survivors unless they give her up. His men mobilize instantly, loading weapons, donning tactical gear. They know this isn't just another territory dispute. They've seen how Elena changed him, brought something human back to their feared boss. Now they're watching that humanity burn away, replaced by something darker, more primal. The last report comes in as they prepare to move. Confirmation of movement at the docks. Multiple vehicles. Armed guards. All the signs of a major Bratva operation. Luca checks his weapon with mechanical precision. His face is a mask of cold focus, but his eyes burn with promise, the same promise he made the night Elena first came to his door. He'll bring her back. And anyone who touched her will learn why the entire city fears his name. Rain hammers against the warehouse's metal roof, each drop a thundering reminder of Elena's isolation. The cold seeps through her thin clothes as she shivers against the chair they've bound her to, ropes biting into her wrists. Her shoulders ache from being pulled back for hours, but she refuses to show weakness to her captors. Through grimy windows high above, lightning occasionally illuminates the vast space filled with shipping containers and forgotten machinery. Distant sirens wail through the storm, growing closer, then fading away like lost souls. Elena's heart clenches. Each one could mean Luca's men approaching, and the thought terrifies her more than her own situation. "Don't come," she silently pleads. "Don't die for me." The Bratva leader, Victor, paces before her with casual menace. His expensive shoes click against concrete, counterpoint to the rain's rhythm. Unlike his thuggish men, he carries himself with cultured precision, all the more chilling for the cruelty in his pale eyes. "You're Luca," Victor says, his accent thick with contempt. He thinks himself untouchable, but we know better, don't we? He stops in front of Elena, studying her like a specimen. "Did he tell you how many he killed to keep you safe these past days? How many deals he broke? Lives he traded?" Elena keeps her jaw set, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a response. But his words burrow deep, feeding the doubts that have plagued her since learning of Luca's connection to her past. "Such loyalty," Victor mocks, noting her silence. "But you don't know him like we do. The monster who burned our families for power, who betrayed alliances for control." He leans closer, his cologne cloying. "And now he trades it all for you. Tell me, what makes you so special?" A distant explosion makes the windows rattle. Elena's heart stops as gunfire erupts, still far but drawing nearer. Victor's men shift uneasily, hands tightening on weapons. "Your death will break him," Victor continues, almost admiringly. "The great Luca Moretti, undone by a woman and a child who aren't even his." He checks his watch with exaggerated casualness. "Speaking of the child," Elena lurches against her restraints, fear for Lily overwhelming her caution. "If you've hurt her—" "Ah, now she speaks." Victor's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "The girl is safe. For now. Insurance, you understand?" More gunfire, closer. The warehouse walls seem to vibrate with it. Elena tastes copper. She's bitten her lip to keep from screaming as Victor's words sink in. Lily is alive, still alive. She clings to that thought as chaos erupts outside. Running footsteps echo through the warehouse. The rain drums harder. Lightning flashing through the high windows like nature itself is part of the coming storm. A shadow appears in the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, deadly. Water streams from his coat, but Luca moves with lethal grace as he steps into the light. His gun is steady in his hand, his eyes locked on Victor with murderous intent. Those eyes flick to Elena for just a moment, cataloging her condition, before returning to their target. Let her go. His voice carries through the warehouse, quiet but filled with such absolute authority that even Victor's men hesitate. The warehouse erupts in chaos. Glass shatters as bullets tear through windows. The Bratva leader yanks Elena up by her hair, using her as a shield while his men open fire. The sound is deafening in the enclosed space, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like lightning. "Mama!" Lily's scream pierces through the gunfire. Elena's heart stops as she sees her daughter huddled in the corner, hands over her ears, tears streaming down her face. Through the smoke and confusion, Luca moves like a shadow. His men fan out, precise and lethal. Bodies drop. The air fills with cordite and copper. Elena watches in terror as Luca cuts through the Bratva's defenses, his expression carved from stone. He's not the controlled businessman now. This is the monster everyone fears. "Stay back!" The Bratva leader presses his gun to Elena's parched temple. One more step, and she dies. Luca pauses, his eyes meeting Elena's. In that split second, she sees something raw and desperate beneath the ice. Then she remembers his training from their days in the mansion, how to break a hold, where to strike. She drives her elbow back hard, catching her captor in the ribs. The moment she twists free, Luca surges forward. But another Bratva soldier emerges from the shadows, taking aim at Lily. Elena doesn't think, she moves. 3 long strides, and she throws herself over her daughter, shielding her with her body. The gunshot she expects doesn't come. Instead, she hears Luca's grunt of pain. He took the bullet meant for them. Blood blooms across his shoulder, but he doesn't slow. The Bratva leader charges him with a knife. What follows makes Elena cover Lily's eyes. Luca's controlled violence becomes something else, primal, personal. He disarms the leader with brutal efficiency, bones cracking. The knife clatters away. His hands lock around the man's throat. "You touched what's mine," Luca snarls, voice barely human. The leader tries to speak, face purpling. Luca doesn't let him. One sharp twist, and it's over. The warehouse falls silent except for Lily's quiet sobs and the rain drumming on the metal roof. Elena rocks her daughter, whispering comfort, but her eyes are locked on Luca. He stands for a moment, swaying slightly, before his knees buckle. "Luca!" Elena scrambles to him, heart in her throat. He's chalk white, blood soaking his shirt. "No, no, no!" She presses her hands over the wound, feeling his warm blood seep between her fingers. His breathing is ragged, but his eyes are clear when they meet hers. "Elena." He tries to reach for her face, but his hand falls back. "You don't die on me," she orders, voice breaking. "You hear me? After everything, you don't get to die now." Lily appears at her side, small hands clutching Luca's sleeve. "Please don't go," she whispers. "You saved us." Luca's men secure the warehouse, calling for medical support, but Elena barely notices. She keeps pressure on the wound, refusing to let him slip away. Not now. Not when she finally understands what he means to her, what he's always meant to her. The bullet took him high in the shoulder, missing anything vital, but he's losing too much blood. Every breath seems to cost him more effort. Still, his good hand finds hers, squeezing weakly. "Worth it," he manages. "Both of you. Always worth it." The ambulance sirens pierced the night, their wailing echoing off the warehouse walls. Rain hammered against the pavement as Luca's men carried him through puddles, reflecting red and blue emergency lights. Blood dripped from his shoulder, mixing with rainwater, creating pink rivers that disappeared into the storm drains. Elena clutched Lily to her chest with one arm, while her other hand gripped Luca's fingers. His skin felt cold, too cold. His usually sharp eyes were unfocused, his breathing shallow. The back of the SUV was cramped with Marco driving and another guard in the passenger seat, both speaking rapid Italian into their phones. "Stay with me," Elena whispered, pressing harder against his wound. Her hands were stained crimson, but she couldn't let go. Not now. Not after everything. "You promised to protect us, remember? You don't get to break that promise." Luca's eyes flickered open, finding hers through the haze of pain. "No one," he started, his voice rough and weak, "touches what's mine." The words were barely audible over the engine and sirens, but they made her heart clench. The hospital entrance burst with activity as they arrived. Medical staff swarmed the SUV, pulling Luca onto a stretcher. Elena watched, still holding Lily, as they rushed him through double doors. His men positioned themselves throughout the hospital floor, some in scrubs, others in plain clothes, but all armed and vigilant. Hours crawled by in the sterile waiting room. Lily finally slept, curled up across plastic chairs, while Elena paced. Her clothes were still wet, spotted with Luca's blood. A nurse offered her scrubs, but she couldn't bring herself to change. It felt like washing away the night, washing away him. When they finally let her see him, the sight stopped her breath. Luca Moretti, the man who commanded respect with a whisper, who could silence a room with a glance, lay still and pale against white sheets. Monitors beeped steadily, marking each heartbeat like a countdown. IVs snaked from his arms, and fresh bandages wrapped his shoulder. Elena sank into the chair beside his bed, taking his hand. His fingers were warmer now, but limp in her grasp. She traced the scars on his knuckles, remembering how those same hands had killed for her tonight, had shielded her daughter from bullets. "You're insane," she whispered, echoing words from days ago that felt like years. "Completely insane for taking that bullet. For burning down half the city. She swallowed hard. For caring about us at all." The monitors kept their steady rhythm as dawn crept through the windows. Nurses came and went. Guards rotated shifts. Elena didn't move. She held his hand through it all, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a blessing. Sometime in the early morning, when the sky was turning from black to gray, his fingers twitched in hers. It was small, barely there, but she felt it. His hand squeezed back, weak but alive. The simple movement carried more weight than any words could have. It meant survival. It meant tomorrow. Elena leaned forward, pressing her forehead against their joined hands. She didn't pray. She'd stopped believing in God's mercy long ago, but she thanked whatever force had kept him breathing, had brought him back to her. Because somewhere between the fear and fury, between bullets and blood, she'd realized a truth she couldn't deny. She needed him to live. His fingers twitched again, stronger this time, and she lifted her head to find his eyes open, clouded with pain but alert, finding her immediately. That gaze still held the same intensity that had pinned her in place the first night she'd knocked on his door. But now there was something else there, too. Something that made her grip his hand tighter and whisper, "Welcome back." The morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital room, painting stripes of gold through the half-drawn blinds. Outside, wisps of dark smoke still curled up from the warehouse district, a reminder of last night's inferno. The city was quiet now, holding its breath, as if aware that something fundamental had shifted in its underworld. Luca stirred on the hospital bed, his fingers twitching against the white sheets. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside him, its rhythm a counterpoint to his labored breathing. Bandages wrapped his torso, spotted with red where the bullets had torn through muscle and flesh. His usually sharp features were softened by exhaustion and medication, making him look almost vulnerable. Elena sat in the chair beside him, dark circles under her eyes from the sleepless night. She hadn't left his side since they'd brought him in, her clothes still stained with his blood. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him falling, taking those bullets meant for her and Lily. The memory made her throat tight. His eyes flickered open, focusing slowly. Recognition dawned in them when he saw her, followed by something deeper. Relief, possession, need. He tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. "Here," Elena whispered, helping him sip water through a straw. Her hand trembled slightly against the cup. "The doctors say you'll recover, though you scared years off my life." Luca's lips curved slightly, though pain lined his face. "Worth it," he managed, voice rough. His hand found hers on the bed rail, fingers intertwining with surprising strength. A soft knock at the door made them both look up. One of Luca's men stood there, Lily's small hand in his. The child's eyes went wide at seeing Luca in the hospital bed. But there was no fear, only concern beyond her years. "Mommy said you got hurt saving us," Lily said, stepping closer. Her pink dress was wrinkled from sleep, her dark curls wild around her face. She clutched her recovered stuffed bear tightly. Something raw and vulnerable crossed Luca's face. He struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring Elena's protest. "I did," he answered simply, his voice gentler than Elena had ever heard it. Lily moved to the bedside, studying him with solemn eyes. Then, without warning, she climbed onto the edge of the bed and wrapped her arms around his neck in a careful hug. "Thank you for bringing me back to Mommy." Luca went completely still, as if afraid to breathe. His hands hovered uncertainly before settling on Lily's back, so light they barely touched her. Elena saw the wetness in his eyes before he closed them, pressing his face against Lily's hair. The gesture was achingly tender from a man who dealt in violence. "Always, Piccola," he whispered. "Always." The moment stretched, filled with unspoken things. Through the window, sirens wailed in the distance, the city slowly coming back to life. But here, in this room, time seemed suspended, as if the world outside had ceased to exist. When Lily finally pulled back, Luca's composure had returned, but something in him had shifted. The way he looked at them both spoke of decisions made, boundaries redrawn. His empire might rule through fear, but in this room, there was only fierce protection. Elena's heart thundered in her chest. She'd seen him kill without hesitation, had witnessed his ruthless control. But this gentle man holding her daughter as if she were made of glass, this was the truth of him. The monster and the protector, the shadow and the light. "We're going home," Elena whispered, meaning to gather Lily and give him rest. But the words carried more weight than she'd intended, heavy with possibility. Luca's eyes met hers, dark and certain. "You already are," he replied softly, his fingers tightening around hers. It wasn't a command or a threat. It was a promise, sealed in blood and bullets, in tender moments and fierce protection. The morning sun painted long shadows across the neighborhood as black SUVs rolled through the streets. Luca's men worked methodically, clearing the last traces of Bratva influence from their territory. The war was over, but the cleanup had only begun. Elena watched from the mansion's kitchen window, cradling a cup of coffee between her hands. The familiar weight of fear had lifted, replaced by an uncertain calm. Lily played in the adjacent room, her laughter a reminder that some things could heal. A door opened behind her. Luca entered, his movements still careful from his healing wounds. The doctors had insisted on rest, but he'd ignored them. coordinating the territory's restoration from his study. His presence filled the room, less threatening now, but no less powerful. They found Matteo, he said quietly, pouring himself coffee. What was left of him? Elena's hands tightened around her cup. What happened? His own crew turned on him. They knew what betrayal meant. Death by my hand or theirs. They chose to handle it themselves. His voice held no satisfaction, just cold finality. It's done, she nodded, processing the news. Matteo's kindness had been poison, his smile a mask. The memory of his betrayal still stung, but its power faded with each passing day. Throughout the mansion, life continued rebuilding itself. Security teams rotated shifts, staff cleaned and cooked, and Luca's lieutenants came and went with reports. Elena had meant to return home days ago, but Luca's insistence on their safety had been absolute. Until we're certain, he'd said, and she hadn't argued. The afternoon stretched into evening. Elena helped Lily with homework, made dinner, tried to maintain normalcy in this abnormal situation. She caught Luca watching them sometimes, his expression unreadable but intense. As night fell, the city lights began to twinkle. Elena tucked Lily into bed, a routine that felt strange in this massive house, and wandered the quiet halls. She found herself drawn to the open balcony doors, where Luca stood alone against the railing. He didn't turn as she approached, but his shoulders tensed slightly, acknowledging her presence. The wind carried the scent of his cologne, mixed with the crisp night air. Below them, the city spread out like a tapestry of lights and shadows, his kingdom reclaimed and restored. The streets are quiet again, he said, his voice low and contemplative. Because of you. His hands gripped the railing tighter. Because of what I am, what I do. He paused, still not looking at her. You could still walk away. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Elena stepped closer, feeling the warmth, radiating from his body in the cool night air. She didn't speak, letting the silence answer for her. The city continued its nighttime symphony below. Distant sirens, the hum of traffic. Life moving forward after the storm. In this moment of peace, the violence of recent days felt like a fading nightmare. But Elena knew better. This was his world, beautiful and dangerous, just like him. She stayed beside him, watching the city lights flicker like stars fallen to earth. Neither spoke again. They didn't need to. Her presence was answer enough. The city lights twinkled below like fallen stars as Elena found Luca on the balcony. He stood with his hands braced against the iron railing, shadows playing across the hard planes of his face. The bandages beneath his shirt were fresh. She'd helped change them herself just hours ago. We need to talk, she said, her voice carrying on the night breeze. He didn't turn, but his shoulders tensed. About Lily. Elena moved beside him, close, enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. Yes, about the possibility that she's mine? Now he did look at her, those dark eyes intense. Does it frighten you? She wrapped her arms around herself, fighting a shiver that had nothing to do with the cool air. What frightens me is not knowing. My sister, she never told me about you. Maria. He spoke the name like a prayer, or perhaps a curse. It was brief, desperate. We were both running from something back then. And now my daughter might be yours. Elena's voice cracked. How can you be so calm about this? Luca turned fully toward her, one hand reaching out to brush her cheek. The touch sparked electricity through her skin. Because blood doesn't matter anymore. These past weeks, watching you fight for her, seeing her strength, her smile. She's ours now. That's all that counts. The possessiveness in his voice made her breath catch. Ours? You know what I feel for you, he said roughly. What's been building since that first night you came to my door? Elena's heart thundered against her ribs. The tension that had simmered between them for weeks reached a breaking point. "Show me," she whispered. His control snapped. In one fluid motion, he pulled her against him, his mouth claiming hers with desperate hunger. Elena gasped, then melted into the kiss, her fingers clutching his shirt. He tasted of whiskey and danger and something uniquely him that made her head spin. "Elena," he breathed against her lips. "My Elena, do you know how long I've wanted this?" "Wanted you?" she answered by kissing him harder, pouring weeks of fear and longing and growing trust into it. His hands slid down her back, pressing her closer until there was no space between them. The city below faded away. There was only this, only him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Luca rested his forehead against hers. "I should have told you sooner about Maria. About the possibility, it doesn't matter. Now." She cut him off, echoing his earlier words. "What matters is that you brought our daughter home." His eyes darkened at the word "our," and he captured her mouth again. This kiss slower but no less intense. Elena felt the last of her walls crumbling. This dangerous man who'd turned the city upside down for her, who looked at her daughter with such tenderness, he'd somehow become her safe harbor in the storm. "Stay with me," he murmured against her skin. "Both of you. Not just for protection anymore." She traced the scar along his jaw, feeling him shudder at her touch. "You know I can't leave now. You're under my skin, Luca Moretti." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, his gaze burning with emotion. "You're my beginning and my end," he whispered, before claiming her lips once more. Dawn breaks over the city, painting the sky in gentle pinks and golds. The streets below the Moretti mansion are quiet now, a different kind of silence than the fearful hush that used to blanket the neighborhood. Children play on sidewalks again. Shopkeepers sweep their storefronts without looking over their shoulders. The war that raged weeks ago feels like a distant nightmare. Inside the mansion's iron gates, roses climb trellises where security cameras once dominated. The garden, once stark and utilitarian, now bursts with color, Elena's touch transforming the fortress into something closer to home. Lily's laughter echoes across the courtyard as she chases butterflies, her pink dress fluttering in the morning breeze. Luca stands at his study window, watching them. His shoulder still aches where the bullet tore through, but he wears the pain like a medal, a reminder of what he gained by bleeding. His men notice the changes in him, the way his hard edges have softened, how his orders carry less bite. "The devil of the neighborhood found his heaven," they whisper. And they're right. Every night, he sits in Lily's room, reading stories until she falls asleep. His large hands, calloused from violence, now turn pages with impossible gentleness. Sometimes, Elena finds him there long after Lily's dozed off, just watching their daughter breathe. Their daughter, the words still catch in his throat. Blood or not, she became his the moment Elena walked through his door. The neighborhood still whispers the Moretti name, but differently now. They see him walk Lily to the park, Elena's hand in his. They watch him nod to old women at the market, carrying their groceries. The monster who ruled through fear now protects through love. His power hasn't diminished. If anything, it's grown stronger. But it's changed, like water shifting from ice to stream. Elena moves through the mansion like she was born to it, her quiet strength matching his intensity. She's redecorated rooms that hadn't changed in decades, bringing light into dark corners. The guards defer to her now, not just because she's with Luca, but because she's earned their loyalty in her own right. She survived the fire and emerged stronger, just like him. From his window, Luca watches as Elena helps Lily plant new flowers in the garden. Their heads bend together, dark and light, while they pat soil around delicate stems. The sight hits him in the chest. This perfect moment he never thought he'd have. After Isabella died, he'd locked away any dream of family, sealed his heart in concrete and steel. But Elena and Lily broke through every wall. Movement on the street catches his attention. Just the regular patrol of his men, maintaining the peace he fought so hard to establish. The Bratva are gone, their territory absorbed or abandoned. Matteo's betrayal served as a warning to anyone else who might consider crossing him. The message was clear. Luca Moretti protects what's his, and heaven help anyone who threatens it. Elena looks up, catching his eye through the window. Her smile still staggers him. How freely she gives it now, how it warms him to his bones. She whispers something to Lily, who waves enthusiastically at him. His girls, his heart walking outside his body. Turning from the window, Luca surveys his study. Photos now sit among the ledgers and weapons, Lily's drawings pinned beside security reports, Elena's scarf draped over his chair, small touches of softness in his hard world. He picks up a stuffed bear from his desk, the same one that lay in the street that first terrible night. Now it's Lily's favorite, a reminder that even the darkest beginnings can lead to light. His eyes drift back to the window, watching Elena guide Lily's hands as they plant another flower. Beyond the gates, the city stretches vast and gray, full of shadows and threats. But here, inside his walls, spring blooms eternal. He reaches for his coat, ready to join his family in the garden, when he pauses to look one last time at the skyline. They took everything once, he murmurs to the city beyond his gates. Never again. With quiet purpose, he walks, away from the window, shutting the heavy doors behind him. The king home with his queen.